The city of Ouagadougou woke up that morning under a golden sky. The streets buzzed with life as vendors opened their stalls and children rushed to school with laughter trailing behind them. For the people, it was just another day, but destiny had already written something different. The school that stood in the heart of the city had always been a place of joy, a building painted with dreams, where little hands scribbled letters and young voices recited poems. Teachers walked through the corridors with lesson plans clutched in their arms, students ran to their classrooms, and mothers who had dropped their children at the gate smiled, reassured that their little ones were safe inside the walls of learning. No one suspected that within minutes those same walls would echo with screams instead of laughter. At his office not far from the school, Captain Ibrahim Traoré was going through reports stacked high on his desk. The weight of leadership was always heavy, yet he carried it with the conviction of a man determined to protect his nation. That morning, his focus was particularly sharp, but his heart wandered back to a personal connection. Among the reports and files lay the memory of his childhood, because the school at the center of his city was not just any school, it was his. The same school where he had once sat at a wooden desk, where he had first written his name on a chalkboard, where he had listened to teachers who taught him not just knowledge but discipline, values, and dreams of a future beyond the dusty streets of his youth. To him, classrooms were holy. They were places where bullets should never echo, where hope should grow freely, unthreatened. He had promised himself long ago that children of his country would never feel fear in a place meant to nurture them. But fate is cruel, and just as the clock struck 8, a black SUV crept around the corner of the school. Its tinted windows shielded the faces inside. A teacher noticed the vehicle and frowned, a small spark of unease flickering within him, but he brushed it off and turned back to his chalkboard, writing the day's lesson with chalk dust on his fingers. A moment later, the SUV stopped abruptly. Doors swung open with force, and masked men jumped out carrying rifles. Their movements were fast, ruthless, and calculated. Gunfire erupted, shattering windows, tearing into walls, scattering books and pencils into the air. Children screamed and scrambled under desks. Teachers rushed forward to protect their students, throwing themselves in front of bullets, trying desperately to hold back the storm. In less than 3 minutes, the world had changed. 5 children lay lifeless on the floor. Dozens more were bleeding, their cries piercing the air. Desks were overturned, notebooks soaked in blood, and just as quickly as they had come, the attackers melted away into the streets, disappearing into the chaos they had left behind. The laughter that had filled the morning was gone forever. In his office, Traoré's phone rang. His aide's voice shook as he delivered the words that would change the captain's life. "Sir, it's the school." Traoré froze, his pen slipping from his hand. His heart pounded. "Which school?" he demanded, his voice sharp. The aide's answer came like a knife. "Yours." The reports on his desk scattered to the ground as he rose in shock. It felt as though the earth had been ripped from beneath his feet. He rushed out of the building, climbed into his convoy, and the streets of Ouagadougou roared with the sound of sirens. Each second of that drive felt like an eternity. The closer they came, the heavier the air grew. He could almost hear the screams before he saw the smoke. When he finally arrived, the sight that met him shattered him. Parents filled the street outside the school, some on their knees crying, some pounding their fists into the ground, others holding their children tight with trembling arms. Teachers stumbled out of the building with blood on their clothes, clutching terrified children. The schoolyard, once filled with games and chatter, was now painted with grief. Blood stained the sand. A child's shoe lay alone, small and innocent, its owner never to return. His security detail tried to hold him back, but Traoré pushed through them with fierce determination. He had to see. He had to feel. Inside, the air was thick with dust and gunpowder. Desks lay overturned, books were scattered, and the chalkboard still bore the unfinished words of a lesson that would never be completed. And there on the floor, tiny bodies lay still, children whose futures had been stolen in an instant. Traoré fell to his knees, his chest tightening as his vision blurred with tears. He touched the small hand of one lifeless child and whispered words that broke from his soul. "I am sorry." Reporters had begun to gather outside, their cameras ready to capture every moment, but Traoré didn't care. For once, politics meant nothing. This was not about leadership or image. This was about children, about family, about his deepest wound. He barked orders, his voice filled with rage and grief. Medics, faster. Seal every road in the city. No one enters, no one leaves. The attackers will not escape. But before strategy, before revenge, he sat with grieving parents. He lowered himself to the ground, held their hands, and listened to their cries. His words came from the heart, spoken as a father rather than a president. Your children are my children. Their loss is my loss. Justice will not wait for tomorrow. It begins today. By noon, Ouagadougou had transformed. Soldiers stood at every checkpoint, vehicles were stopped and searched, helicopters scanned the city from above, and police raided known hideouts. Intelligence teams traced phone calls, combed through clues, and followed whispers. Traoré stayed at the school, refusing to leave, standing shoulder to shoulder with the people, his presence both a comfort and a promise. At 2 p.m., a breakthrough came. Witnesses reported seeing the black SUV speeding toward an abandoned warehouse on the city's edge. Without hesitation, Traoré ordered his special forces to strike. Move now, no delays. Bring them alive if possible. The operation was swift and fierce. Soldiers surrounded the warehouse, stormed inside, and gunfire erupted. Within minutes, 3 attackers were dead, their bodies sprawled on the ground. 2 were captured alive, dragged out in handcuffs, their masks ripped away as crowds outside watched with rage in their eyes. The people shouted, demanding blood, but Traoré raised his hand to silence them. His voice carried authority and sorrow. We are not like them. Justice will speak, not vengeance. Interrogations revealed the attackers were connected to a foreign network determined to destabilize the country, to break its spirit, to weaken its leader. But they had underestimated the unity of Burkina Faso. That evening, Captain Traoré addressed the nation. He stood on live television, his face pale, his uniform stained with the dust of the school, his voice heavy yet unbroken. Today we lost 5 of our brightest stars. They were taken by cowards who hide behind masks, but they have not broken us. Every school will be protected. Every child will walk safely to class. We will mourn, but we will not surrender. His words spread across the nation, through radios, televisions, and word of mouth. Families wept together, children clung to their parents, soldiers clenched their fists, more determined than ever. Across Ouagadougou, candles lit up the night. In windows, in courtyards, on streets, their flames flickered like tiny beacons of resistance. That night, the silence across the city was heavy, but it was not the silence of defeat, it was the silence of unity. In the days that followed, Traoré visited every family that had lost a child. He entered their homes humbly, sat among them, looked at their photographs, listened to their stories. He heard about the little boy who loved drawing, the little girl who dreamed of being a doctor, the twins who were always inseparable in class. He wept with the families and promised each one, "Your child's name will never be forgotten. We will build a memorial. Their memory will live forever." Plans were set in motion to build that memorial in the heart of the schoolyard, a place carved in stone where flowers could be laid, where prayers could be said, where generations could remember. Security doubled at schools across the country. Soldiers patrolled the streets near classrooms, volunteers formed neighborhood watches, and parents found comfort in knowing the community stood together. The attack that was meant to divide had instead united them more fiercely than ever. International attention soon followed. The African Union called upon Traoré to speak. Standing before leaders from across the continent, his voice thundered, "An attack on one child is an attack on all of Africa. If they believe fear will divide us, they are wrong. We will rise stronger, together." His words echoed far beyond the walls of that hall. Offers of support came in, supplies, training, equipment. But Traoré knew that the greatest weapon was not foreign aid. The greatest defense was the unity of his people. Weeks later, the memorial was unveiled. The families of the 5 victims stood side by side, each holding a candle, each placing a flower at the base of the monument. Children sang softly, their voices trembling yet carrying hope. The crowd held hands, and for a moment, the burden of pain felt lighter. Traoré stood before the stone, his eyes glistening. "We could not save them," he whispered, "but we will save the rest." The school reopened. Laughter returned. though it was gentler, more cautious. Teachers noticed the change. Students were quieter, their eyes sharper, as if they had grown older overnight. But within that silence was also strength. The tragedy had forged resilience. Traoré visited often. He sat with the children, read books with them, and spoke about courage. "Knowledge is our weapon," he told them. "With it, we will defeat fear." Months passed, and the captured attackers were brought to trial. The entire nation tuned in as the proceedings unfolded live. Families of victims filled the courtroom. The tension was thick, every heart waiting for justice to speak. When the verdict was finally read, guilty, life imprisonment, the people erupted. Justice had been served. But Traoré knew the fight was not over. For him, the mission was clear. No child in Burkina Faso would ever again fear walking into a classroom. No schoolyard would ever again hear the sound of gunfire. The nation had been wounded, but out of that wound came strength, unity, and the unbreakable promise of a leader who vowed to protect the future at any cost.